We made this.
Engage!
Tea Earl Grey, hot.
There are times, sir, when men of good conscience cannot blindly follow orders. What we leave behind is not as important as how we live.
I'm Captain Jean-Luc Picard of the Federation Starship Enterprise. Make it so.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the We Made This podcast network. My name is Kurt North, and this is a very special event. This is all of our Star Trek universe podcasts all together to talk about Star Trek, surprisingly enough. You've got myself from Make It So, and Craig McKenzie from Rarely Going. Craig, how are you doing, mate?
Hello, I'm doing good. I'm glad to be here on this very special crossover.
It's going to be great. I hope this is going to be something that we're going to do moving forward as well. It'd be nice for us all to get together and to speak together and stuff like that, so that'll be great.
Yeah, we can just meet up and talk random nonsense about Star Trek and then release it.
Well, I'm sure that'll be fine. And we've also got some We Are Starfleet members here as well. First up, Ian Buckley. Ian, how are you doing, mate?
Doing well. How are you guys?
Oh, good. A lot of Star Trek news to get through.
It's exciting.
We're going to have a great discussion. I don't know how long this is going to take either, because there's quite a lot. And then finally, Mike Slamer. How are you doing, mate?
Oh, I'm doing great. Thank you for scheduling this out and making this happen for us. I'm excited to talk some Star Trek.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, Luke was going to be with us today as well, but unfortunately, he's not being able. He's had a massive issue with his computer. His LCAR system's gone down, so he can't come and join us today.
Just tell the truth. We made him demagnetize the turbo lift or whatever dirty jobs that make the lower decks guys do.
Yeah,
he's cleaning the holodeck filters.
Yeah,
that is the worst job in the world, isn't it? Really,
has to be.
So we're recording. It's kind of mid-April, which means that First Contact Day has just gone. So the 2021 First Contact Day, in which we've got multiple various different news things to come out from that. But we also had some other news as well, which has happened in the last couple of days. So we'll talk about all of them. But first up, I think, Mike, I want to talk to you first. I want to ask you about all the Strange New Worlds information that we've had, the big info dump. What did you think to it?
Oh, you definitely came to the wrong guy, because if there's a new info dump that I am not aware of outside of the fact that they are in production, did anything drop as a result of First Contact Day?
Absolutely not.
No? So did I miss something?
No. Yeah, that's it. There's nothing.
There's been zero news.
There's been zero news. Absolutely nothing has come to fruition.
You're pranking me.
I was, absolutely.
You son of a gun. Here I am thinking I didn't do some homework or miss something, and it's just a prank.
It's just a prank.
Oh, my.
Hey, well, I might as well start as a mean to go on.
Right.
Don't worry, man. I was furiously Googling on my phone.
I'm like, oh no! I was about to text you, like, Ian, what did I miss?
My plan was to wait until other people started talking about it and then pretend I knew all along. That was my plan.
There you go.
That's pretty much my plan in every social situation.
Yeah, well, it's a great management tool as well. You set them off, never go first on the round table. Always wait to the end and then listen to what everyone's got to say, form your opinion, and then give it to them straight. That's the way it works. So no Strange New Worlds. I mean, what do you make to that, Ian? The fact that there's no kind of further news. Do you think there's something further down the pipeline, do you reckon? What do you think? Why do you think it's been strangely absent?
Well, I think part of it is to carefully titrate exactly how much information they're releasing all at once. Obviously, there was a decision to emphasize the Picard reveal on First Contact Day. So I feel like there's probably, in one sense, them not wanting to sort of take a lot of the oxygen away from the two things they really wanted to focus on more, which was Picard and Sorry, I don't know if you can hear that. That's my cat in the background. And Discovery, where we got 2 teaser trailers. The Discovery one was actually fairly lengthy. I think part of it is not wanting to take too much of the spotlight away from the 2 other properties they wanted to highlight at this particular point in time. And also they're probably playing their cards a little close to the vest. I hope that's a good sign that they're holding things back, that they want to surprise people and build up hype and anticipation for the show. It could also be that COVID screwed up the schedule a little bit more than we were aware of, and they don't have quite as much ready to show. Could be any of that.
Well, they've barely started, haven't they? They've just got they've got the cast, and they did that quite good cast reveal video, and I forget the names of the actors or the characters that they've announced, but that's all we've got right now, and I think that's all they've got, so that's fine.
It is fine. I think what you've seen in other properties, sometimes Star Wars being an example, is at this stage in production, sometimes when you don't want to reveal a lot of finished footage, or if you don't have any, you might tease a little behind the scenes footage. You might tease a little bit of the Picard teaser didn't reveal any new footage, really, in terms of actual production footage. So there are things they probably could have done if they wanted to. So on some level, it was definitely a conscious choice to hold some information back. I just hope that we get some info soon. I'd love to get a glimpse of what they've got in store for us there. I'm pretty excited for the show.
Which brings me to the next point. Something that's happened over the last couple of days, really, is the movie news that's come out, that whether or not this has been a leak and they've just gone with it, is that we look like we're going to get a new 2023 Star Trek movie. So I wouldn't mind all of your opinions, really. We'll start with Craig on this reveal that there will be a new Star Trek. This has been going on for a number of years now. We've got, J.J. Abrams. There's been things like Quentin Tarantino version. There's the all of the other kind of scripts that are out there with Noah Hawley and, the one from Discovery as well, the Kalinda Vasquez as well. So there's all these things, and even alluding to the really early ones of Chris Hemsworth coming back to play Kirk's dad and stuff. So it's interesting that this has come out not long after the event as well. What do you think, Craig, to this? And is it something that you would get excited for, a new J.J. Abrams produced movie? What are your general thoughts on it?
Well, the Vasquez announcement was before First Contact Day, and then we've timed a release for 2023 was, as you say, after First Contact Day. So I think most people assume they're the same project, but there's a suggestion that it's not. But we've had so many announced and dropped projects over the past few years that I really don't care at this point. I really don't know what to believe. It's just, if it happens, brilliant, then I'll watch it, of course. But it just seems like when it comes to getting a Star Trek movie off the ground, they're just not very good at it, because there is all this toing and froing. And even if you look at the life cycle of the Abrams movies, 2009 comes out, has a lot of momentum, does pretty well, people enjoy it. Then you wait 3 years and all you get is Into Darkness, kills the momentum. You wait another 3 years to coincide with the 50th anniversary, you get Beyond, which is great, I love it, but no one cares by that point. So now we're starting from square one as a movie franchise again. But will it come out? Will it come out when they said it will? Which project is it? Are any of these other ones still happening? I don't know. But if it happens, cool. But let me know. Just do something, put pen to paper and make a film, rather than just announcing stuff and then dropping it.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. Ian, what do you make to it?
Well, I'm always eager to hear that there's going to be more Star Trek of any kind produced, just sort of on a base level. So fine, but I basically at this point, whenever there's a new Star Trek movie project announced, I'm like, yeah, okay, we'll see.
Yeah.
It's just I've gotten my hopes up for some of these announcements in the past. I'm a huge Quentin Tarantino fan. I was super excited that he wanted to do a Star Trek movie. It was kind of his own thing. Whatever. I'm here for it. We were talking a little bit on the Discord. I think you can make a Star Trek movie out of literally anything. Give me a character drama about someone's crippling hollow addiction. I don't care. But until something more concrete materializes, I'm not going to get too excited about any announcements they make.
Yeah, what about you, Michael? What are your general thoughts on another J.J. Abrams movie and how it was announced?
I agree with both Craig and Ian. I didn't particularly mind. I don't particularly mind J.J. Abrams in the producer chair, as long as he's a little bit more laissez-faire about how he's going about it. I'd love to see Justin Lin come back to direct. I thought Beyond was a great film. It is definitely one of my favorite Star Trek films out of all of them. And they're fun, they're engaging, and they bring new audiences in. However, now we're kind of in this interesting Star Trek universe where we have multiple shows going on now, announced, in production, and airing. So to me, it kind of feels like a movie is not really necessary because these TV shows have the budgets of the movies. And historically speaking, the movies were always a vehicle to showcase the big bombastic action of science fiction and Star Trek. And it kind of blended that. If you go back to Star Trek the Motion Picture, they wanted to compete a little bit with Star Wars, and it became an entirely different vehicle. So for the most part, I'm kind of whatever about this. It's a random date just seemingly plucked out of thin air. There's no, director attachment. There's no writer attachment. So this really just kind of tells me that Paramount is trying to capitalize on the current momentum. And maybe they got something going, maybe they don't. And honestly, guys, at this point, it's too early to actually care about it.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that's the way I felt. It's like you've got all this information that's coming out from, First Contact Day, which is like the aim for May the 4th day. They're kind of using this as like their new mainstay for release and stuff. You've got good momentum with like sort of Strange New Worlds, Picard, and Discovery, and rarely going Lower Decks, and to have this kind of just be plucked out, it feels more like they rushed and just went, oh, we need to. This is going to be said or told in the next few days or something. Let's just announce it ourselves. But as you say, that there's 4 or 5 different times that we've heard all these different scripts that are going on. And you're right. I think it's too early to tell, and I don't really give it that much credence. So I'll wait till the trailer drops. Or I'll wait till we've got some more definite news before going on. And then you've got the likes of Zachary Quinto. This was actually reported a few days before the announcement, saying that he's no real idea of whether or not he's coming back for the films. And if pushed, he would do another He would do a TV show based on Spock. Now that is very interesting, usual press writing, because it's kind of like a bit abstract in what he actually said. So he was just kind of going, yeah, sure, if it approached me, I'd look at it, kind of thing. So it was by no means anything like, oh yeah, I'm definitely up for doing one. Yeah. So it's a bit, this is stretching its credibility to a degree with the news that's come out. But as you say, it's kind of the momentum that we've got here. So that's the extraneous stuff out the way. So we did see some stuff. You've alluded to it already. We have seen a few bits and bobs. So I think we'll start with Star Trek Prodigy first, and it's given us kind of the idea of where this lands. This lands 2383, so it's after Nemesis, but before the Mars attack, and it's in the Delta Quadrant. What was the instant reaction, Michael, to the fact this is going to be based in the Delta Quadrant, and not really Starfleet based in the way that it might have come across? This is more someone finding the ship and finding the hologram as such. What did you make to it?
Yeah, I mean, again, they're very tight-lipped about what we can expect from this show. But I'm kind of, the phrase cautious optimism comes to mind. It's a very repeated phrase these days, and that's holding true. The premise of these kids finding this ship in the Delta Quadrant with Captain Catherine Janeway as an emergency command hologram or a training module of some kind is really interesting. So I'm kind of curious as to what kind of story threads they're going to weave to bring that into canon, because as far as we know, there is no hologram of Janeway. So who knows? I'm excited. And it's a kid's show, right? It's supposed to be for Nickelodeon, and there will be a certain level of humor, a certain level of comedy, and a lot of moralistic lessons and humor that appeals to children and appeals to parents of children. So all that to say, this is kind of in Star Trek's wheelhouse. And I think the animation style looks great. So I'm optimistic.
Yeah, Craig, what about yourself then? They mentioned also as well that there's going to be a time with an original series member in some ways, one of the crew that's actually working on there. But to place it in the Delta Quadrant is obviously just to throw it out of the realm of actually being in Starfleet's grasp, so that they can tell these stories. But it is an interesting one. Yeah,
I'm quite interested in this project. A few things stood out to me when I was watching the panel. Kate Mulgrew talking about this material doesn't talk down to the kids. So it's obviously, well, maybe not obviously, but to me, it's obviously going to be a show about, here's a group of kids and they're just going to learn lessons framed through a Star Trek lens, and this Janeway hologram will help them do that. So if Kate Mulgrew says that they're not talking down to children, I'm inclined to believe her. I feel like she's quite choosy with her projects these days. And I know we went through all this with Picard and Patrick Stewart saying, I just said no to this 6 times until it was the perfect thing. Or every time he told the story, it was a different number of times that he said no, that kind of thing. But Kate Mulgrew's really done very little since Voyager, certainly. So I'm inclined to think that there's something in there for her. And there's no talk of her having creative control or anything, so they've obviously come to her with material that she enjoys. So I think the Janeway hologram will play up the more parody nature of Janeway. Maybe she's just a bit, off the wall, a bit of a loose cannon.
Loves the coffee.
Yeah, a bit authoritarian. All this stuff you associate with Janeway when you're having a laugh at her expense, that kind of thing. Maybe she's a bit murderous, I don't know, which she could be in the show a bit. So it really interests me. But yeah, having a Star Trek show that's about kids learning valuable life lessons and being shepherded by one of the franchise's great leaders to an extent is compelling. And I think it's a great way to have Janeway back, but without having Janeway back.
Yeah, and again on that, the fact that it's using the classic Voyager look, Janeway, the fact that she must have lent her image to them, and Catherine actually even said that she wanted her beauty modified. It was like she looked too beautiful. You need to sort of get rid of the chin and things like that. Which in itself, the fact that she does have some aspects of her own image to portray, but it would be interesting to, as you say, to see where they go. I mean, placing the Delta Quadrant, Ian, as well, not only from what Craig's just been saying there about the lessons that they can learn, but placing it in the Delta Quadrant, one, as I say, keeps it at arm's reach, but also it has, that's where Janeway has been. So it's also giving you a kind of a Voyager link in that way as well, the fact that you could come across other species that we may have met over in Voyager.
Right, and it seems like I think at least one of the characters is Talaxian, so it sort of, again, like you said, it makes sense. There's a verisimilitude to having Janeway interact with these Delta Quadrant species, many of which we'll have encountered before. Maybe we'll actually, I'd be surprised if we didn't revisit actual characters that we encountered before, even if they were only in passing or maybe just encountered for 1 or 2 episodes. So I think there's a lot of opportunity to explore there, and keeping it at arm's reach kind of keeps it free of a lot of overarching concerns about canon and how it fits into what's going on in the alpha, beta, and gamma quadrants, because it's just this far-flung adventure that doesn't really have to interact directly with what the other shows are doing.
Was there anything else that came up on the Craig? Because I didn't see that panel, to be fair. So was there anything else that came up on that, or was it just like the others and it was like a 5-10 minute quick segment?
Yeah, no, I can recall. It was just what really stood out to me was that Kate Mulgrew was very excited about the project, and she really liked that kind of imparting wisdom to the younger generation, and about how Star Trek is representative of everyone, and that's something that she's really excited about. So it's going to be great to see Kate Mulgrew back in the franchise. The last voiced over thing she did, I think, was Star Trek Legacy, which is a middling video game.
Yeah, I vaguely remember it. Her enthusiasm for the project definitely shines through all of the, I know part of her job is to do press and to build excitement for these things, but it does seem that she's genuinely enthusiastic now that she's able to speak more openly about it, about the work that she was doing on the show. And that makes me more enthusiastic as a fan about it.
Well, she's doing it and she doesn't have to. So
right.
Yeah.
Right. It's like I know that doing press is a part of the role, but it feels like the way in which she's talking about it is above and beyond where, the bare minimum of what she has to do.
Yeah, you've got to look at the show as well, the way that the other ones, you've got particular showrunners in that. And I know, Michael, that you were going to mention something about the showrunners on this one, weren't you?
The showrunners are pair of brothers, Dan and Kevin Hageman, if I'm saying that correctly. So they actually wrote and produced a animated series called Troll Hunters, which went on to win quite a few awards. And also Anton Yelchin, who is Chekhov in the Kelvinverse films, had lent some of his voice acting to the Troll Hunters series. So there's an interesting little, tie in there that you wouldn't necessarily expect.
Oh, right. Okay. The Prodigy is the one I've not been paying that much attention to. I've seen, obviously, when the images have come out and not really paid that much attention to these panels. I just haven't had the time. But it's certainly an interesting one. The more that I talk about it and think about it, it's going to be interesting to see it and watch it and see how it runs. But we'll move on to the next one. And I want to say to some people on this panel is that make no mistake that you are in charge of We Are Starfleet. So let's talk about Star Trek Discovery Season 4. Ian, just a general overview of this trailer, because this is the most meatiest thing that we had through the show in aspects of real on-screen stuff. So what did you make to the trailer in general?
Definitely the most on-screen footage. I was actually a little surprised how much footage we were getting. It feels like Season 3 just ended. But because of COVID shifting production and release, we're actually a little bit closer to the release timeline for Disco than we would be. So it's pretty exciting to see this much footage. And right away, obviously, the thing that I think popped out to everyone was they've already changed the uniforms, even before Season 4 begins. I've got to be honest, I do like the color uniforms better than the grays personally, but I'm still not super enthusiastic about the overall look of the uniforms. Maybe it'll grow on me. I don't really remember having any strong feelings about any particular uniform change. So I'm sure that I'll just get used to it. It doesn't really affect me one way or the other too much.
I remember I hated the gray uniforms at first.
Yeah, I didn't like them. I still think the overall uniform, because the overall uniform, like the cut and design of it, that didn't change. They basically just changed the colors in post. I'm not the biggest fan of, but it's fine. I think we'll all get used to it. There was a little bit of chat about how there does seem to be like there's going to be another galaxy threatening anomaly or quadrant threatening anomaly of some sort. In this case, some sort of gravitational anomaly that lines up with some of the production rumors I'd heard that they've been doing a lot of wire work and there was some like anti-grav stunt work being done this season. So that seems to fit with there being some sort of gravitational anomaly that they're going to be confronting.
Yeah, so that's the big point, I think, and I think wouldn't mind getting everyone's opinion on it, because I've toed and froed about it. I like what happened in Picard. It was a bit like, oh, no, don't do that. Why are you doing that?
Yeah.
And with this one, I'm to and fro because the way that it seems to be, I don't know if Michael, if you agree with this, but it seems to be that it's like it's an event that's happening which can cause issues, but it isn't like a big bad or and you could revolve around it, say something like the post-pandemic or climate change, or, you could have quite a few stories in regards to that kind of thing. And, and especially with the likes of Navarre being there, and it seems that the Federation are kind of pulling together and stuff like that. So I'm in two minds about it. Obviously, we need to see more, but what was your takeaway to the gravitational anomaly before we move on to any of the actual deeper stuff within it?
Gravitational anomaly. The first thing that popped into my mind watching this trailer when they said that was feature from the motion picture. Here is this, massive anomaly just barreling down through the solar system, right? And of course, it takes the Enterprise to go to the heart of it, and it takes a sacrifice amongst the crew, and Spock melding with the machine and learning of its origins. So, yeah, I didn't mind so much that it feels very on brand for Star Trek. And I had to, watching this trailer, you sometimes have an opportunity to learn things about yourself. And I learned about myself that I am becoming a bit of a curmudgeon-y old man. Ian may have felt fine about the uniforms or was relatively indifferent. I had a little bit more of a visceral reaction where I like the color, but I don't like the style. I didn't like the gray uniforms, and they certainly don't look good colored in either. And, listen, I'm an old man. I'll take the hit here. That's fine. I'll get over it. It's not that big of a deal. But gravitational anomaly, this trailer, it pitches it as this, it's 5 light years across. And I actually had to research what a light year actually is, because, yes, I have some inkling of an idea, but it's so hard to imagine this vast distance a light year actually is. A trip from at light speed to the very edge of our solar system, the farthest reaches of the Oort cloud, which is, a bunch of comets way out there, would take just under 2 years.
Yeah.
Okay. So that is at light speed. So when you think about 5 light years, this is a massive distance across space.
If memory serves me right, isn't Andromeda 4.2 light years away from us?
Proxima Centauri.
Proxima Centauri, yes. Sorry, that's the one.
Yeah. That's our nearest neighboring star. So that so Alpha Centauri, the actual planet itself, it's just under.
Yeah.
But yeah, like there you go. It's such a massive length of distance and time as well. So gravitational anomaly, like Ian mentioned, could it be, an allegory for post-pandemic? Is it an allegory for climate change? Well, we just did an allegory for climate change. And, what did we learn? Nothing really. We just went back to the same old mining dilithium. So it's hard to think that there's going to be a real lesson learned, a real takeaway. And it's hard to feel positive about any good growth coming of this story, considering season 3's, climate change allegory and how we didn't learn anything really. So I'm fine with the anomaly. It could be just a 1, 2, 3 episode problem that then gets resolved, and then we move on to the real big bad, which is, some entity or person who's actually out to destroy all life in the galaxy again. But that remains to be seen.
Yeah, they could go in unexpected directions. I kind of hope they do. That the gravitational anomaly is maybe not the thing, but maybe a thing that leads them to the real problem or the real antagonist of the season or whatever. But it does seem like, we're really getting a sense that this is, Discovery is in its current iteration kind of a funhouse mirror version of one of the early concepts that Brian Fuller had for the series, which was to do an anthology series where every season would be a different story. I think his concept it would be a different ship and a different cast, and took it quite a bit further. But essentially, it was each season is going to tell a story, and that's this show. And it does seem like they're pretty, they're closely kind of following along with that kind of identity with this show. It does seem like we're getting sort of like season-long problem that our plucky crew is going to figure their way through. And that's fine. You know, you can do that well. But I do think that you do run the risk of losing some faith when you do things like Mike was alluding to, have this, you know, potentially pretty compelling story about climate change and disconnection, and you just sort of hit the reset button at the end and, you know, wipe your hands clean of it and are like, okay, we're done telling this story, now on to the next one.
Yeah, that's the big struggle with it. I think they've kind of fallen into this completely by accident with all the stuff that's gone on behind the scenes over the last 4 years. That, you know, they've fallen into this this mold really, and it is a bit off-putting that you feel like you've just got, oh, let's move on to the next thing. And, you know, you would hope that the fact that we've got likes of Navarre being involved, that you've got, you know, that they are kind of at least having some sort of tether to the previous seasons. And I'm sure we'll talk about that shortly. But what about your gravitational anomaly then, Craig? What did you think to it on first viewing?
So, as I said, as it has been said, it is possible it is just a 1, 2, 3 episode, whatever problem that they can deal with. And you can imagine Star Trek of old, an episode of Voyager where we've detected an anomaly, it's 5 years across, and they'd have it dissipated within half an hour.
Yeah.
That's what they do on Voyager. That's just the way it is. But this leaping from apocalypse to apocalypse is getting exhausting, because we had an apocalypse in the first season with the Mirror Universe guys tearing apart the universe by mistreating the mycelial network. Then you had the synthetics, or the artificial intelligence in season 2. And then the synthetics in Picard, which was the same thing, basically. They were going to do the same thing. Season 3, they appeared after an apocalyptic event and then resolved it. And now we're back to another one. So it's just quite exhausting. And it's that expansionism problem, isn't it? We've got this situation where we just need to keep raising the stakes, but at what point does it just get too ridiculous? Can we go back to something a bit more simplistic, where they're just having to solve very significant personal issues or significant political issues or whatever else? And I think it's something that, you know, is worth discussing, is whether the modern era of Star Trek has lost something that the old era had. I don't want to be one of those guys where it's Star Trek of old is the only Star Trek, because I don't believe that at all. I think there's merit to the new stuff as well. But because we're only getting like 13, 15, whatever it is, episodes, we are getting this situation where we're trying to tell a contained story very quickly. So we don't really have time for this. We're just going to nip off and investigate this planet or investigate this nebula. And that's all it is. That's all this episode is. That's all we're doing. And then we'll get back to something else. And because it's all plot, isn't it?
Yeah.
You get very few scenes where it's just people chatting. There's always a purpose to that scene that feeds into the plot or the emotional journey that a character's going through. Rather than, let's use, for example, the root beer scene from Way of the Warrior. It has no bearing on anything. Yeah. It's just two characters sharing their opinion. And that's valuable in itself. But the modern era, it's very much, every scene has that connected purpose to the overall narrative. Yeah. And it's a bit unnatural. And if we're just heading into another apocalypse, I feel like I'll just get a bit desensitized to it and a bit bored with Discovery doing that all the time.
Sure.
Because I want it to be Star Trek. I want it to be, we're going somewhere to look at something we've never seen before. And it might not try to kill us. It might do something else.
That can be interesting too. And the way in which we respond to these new things that we discover, lead us to discover things about ourselves. For a show called Discovery, I feel like there could be a little more revelation, and a little more self-exploration, and a little more, also a little more exterior exploration. I mean, like you said, we're dealing with crises as opposed to some of these other issues that we're used to Star Trek exploring.
Yeah, like the social political
stuff. It's like everything is in crisis mode.
Yeah, Strange New Worlds might be that, but we don't know.
It is. Yeah, I mean, I think what we're saying is that What we're missing are those opportunities for character development that you sometimes get out of a show like Deep Space Nine, where you have 22 to 26 episodes in a season, but they are committed to this format, it seems, of telling these tightly contained, self-contained stories within each half season or full season. And what that leads to is, like you said, we're just sort of rushing from one crisis to the next, and sometimes we're drawing these moments out. We're taking a lot of time for some of these moments that aren't actually informing us about character, or getting us to invest in what's going on screen. And that's a balance they're going to have to continue to try to strike.
Yeah, I mean, I'll use two examples of like Nepenthe on Star Trek Picard, and then you've got the episode in Star Trek Discovery season 3 with the wake for Giorgio, and it's like the Giorgio one just didn't felt earned. It felt like it was a story plot to get her off the ship and to say, oh look, we all raise a glass to her, and it's like, but she was so antagonistic that most people didn't like her. Whereas Nepenthe was, I know it's different because it's legacy characters and it feels like that was a natural progression to where they were, but it was classed as one of the best episodes of the season.
Absolutely.
And the fact that they took that time to breathe is something that, I think that Discovery could take its lesson from. And it's whether or not they actually do decide that, because it does feel a lot of the new stuff that comes on stream, and this is not only Star Trek, sometimes it can feel just a bit too overt and not opaque enough, or not, just living in its own skin for a second, just let us breathe for a little bit.
Right.
And I always feel that a little bit with We Are Starfleet. Oh, actually, I did it again. Bloody hell.
You're doing it again.
I'm tired. With Star Trek Discovery. So
you guys are all making great points here. And I want to add that it definitely feels as though the crew of the Discovery is constantly responding to a crisis. They're never just being Starfleet officers. They're always going from one problem to the next problem, to the next problem, to the next problem. And it doesn't, correct to your point, Way of the Warrior, Ian, you guys discussed how having this root beer moment, you're just sitting there, and that particular scene doesn't mean anything in the grand scheme of the story, but it helps humanize these characters in a way that going through another traumatic event doesn't humanize Culber any more than his already traumatic events have. How many times can these characters on the bridge of the Discovery go through these terrible, terrible things, be constantly beaten, and we're never shown them taking the time to heal, taking the time to lean on each other, take the time to grow from these moments. They never get their root beer. They always get, stabbed or shot or sent through the mycelial network, or they have to go back to their home planet and leave the ship because they feel burdened to their people. It's always a problem. And Ian, you nailed it, man. Like when you said that for a show called Discovery, we're not really doing a whole lot of discovering. I'm not just talking about science and space. I'm talking about the human condition, because that's what Star Trek and science fiction really does best. It explores humanity and explores who we are in the grand total scheme of the universe. And we don't get that from this show. Yeah. And as good as the show can be, which you hear on We Are Starfleet, Ian, you and I talk about it all the time, it's when they do it good, they do it so good, it only highlights how better it could be and how consistent it could be when they get it wrong.
Right. And, a good way to get us to invest and care about these characters when they're in crisis and when they're thrown into situations of adversity is to let us get to know them when they're not. Get us to care about their quote unquote normal lives so that when they want to get back to that, we want them to get back to that too.
Yeah. Well, I think there's three things that I want to bring up with regards to what's happening in the trailer, which we may get strands of, and that's Nivar with Book getting a mind meld, which in itself is interesting itself because of Book's empathy. His kind of unusual aspect there. we get Adira with Grey, but we definitely don't get anything more than that because deliberately kept to a point of like we don't know where Grey's situation is right at this moment in time. And you get the Kelpian that we all know and love, who seems to be in Starfleet at some point, but is also, maybe potentially an ambassador for the thing. So there's 3 story threads there. I mean, I don't know what you think, Michael, to those 3 story threads and whether or not that could give us that kind of, that kind of inner look rather than looking at this gravitational thing.
Well, first, I'm excited to see that David Ajala is coming back and reprising his role as Cleveland Booker. I mean, I know it was pretty much a given, but you never know with these kinds of things. And, having that confirmed is nice. I think the implications of, the Navarre president, my brain wants to say Vulcan, but the Navarre president doing a mind meld with this Qui-Gon empath, of course, that's the perfect scene to put in a trailer because it wants you to question what happened and why is this happening and what are the implications surrounding this. So pretty interesting stuff. Excited to see Booker coming back. It looks like in every scene that he's in the trailer, he's in his black civilian outfit. So it looks as though he has not joined Starfleet like he said he was going to. Which also begs the question, is he on board the Discovery as a consultant? Is he on board the Discovery as the captain's boyfriend? There's questions. And this is what a trailer is supposed to do, is make you ask them.
Yeah, Craig, what do you make to those 3 aspects then? Hopefully they will use that to a greater understanding of the characters and the deeper discussion. I mean, they've already had a good go at Adira and Grey last season, so it's going to build on that, and they did say at the end of that season that they were going to build on it. So what do you make to these 3?
Yeah, well, I'm fairly sure Grey will get some kind of holographic avatar that he can inhabit and that everybody can see him, because they already did that, and there's no reason that the technology doesn't exist, because it already exists, so they can do that no problem. So I imagine that will probably happen. In terms of the opportunities for development, I think that's a given. Anything they do is an opportunity to explore something. And it's whether they take that opportunity and give us something with it. And again, let's just drink it in for a bit. Let's not make it all part of the ongoing crisis. Let's just have moments between characters that are just moments between characters. That's fine, because some of my favourite scenes in Star Trek or favourite stories in Star Trek are just a couple of people puzzling through something that isn't life-threatening. And it's a problem they need to solve, or maybe not even a problem. It's just a situation that they're in that they need to deal with in some way. And
sorry,
let's not. Yeah, let's not go there. Really, she's cured. Yeah, that's 5 minutes of therapy and an action sequence, and you're done. You're all good. You're good to go. But I think that you could get more of that. I mean, I've been watching a lot of 90s Trek, just, to keep me sane through lockdown. And I've really been noticing in Deep Space Nine and Voyager, which is what I'm on just now, is you get a lot of that, actually. You get a lot of these scenes of people just sitting around having a chat.
Yeah.
And it's not about anything. It's not to do with anything. Or in Deep Space Nine, you get the requisite scene where Odo walks into Quark's bar just to needle him about something.
Yeah.
And it has nothing to do with anything. Or you have the subplot that's not connected to the A-plot in any way, other than it takes place on the same ship or station. But they have nothing to do with each other. The Swarm, for example, which is the Voyager episode I just watched, the Doctor's program on the Fritz has nothing to do with the Swarm. Nothing at all. But it's something that's happening. The only thing it has to do with it is it diverts Torres' attention occasionally. But the 2 plots are completely distinct, and that's fine. We can have that. The ship's big enough. And especially if they're not in life-threatening danger all the time, we can do that.
Yeah, I mean, we know that a lot of the earlier Trek series, they all had real budget limitations, right? And Discovery, Picard,
less so,
they basically have a blank check right now. So it's almost as if, working under those limitations, they had to have a strong script. They had to have a compelling character drama, whereas this era of Star Trek is, like visually stunning, and it's a feast for the eyes, but the writing has taken a hit. You don't get those character drama moments anymore.
And you'd think that even one of the 13 or 15 episodes or whatever they would do, you'd find a way of doing a bottle episode in some way, or and just delve into someone on how they're reacting. I mean, I know I joked about Detmer before, but you could have easily had something that would actually, some drastic thing happen on the ship, and you spend a little bit of time dealing with that aspect, and just delving into it. But as you say, it's a plot movement forward. Let's go forward. Let's get to the end. So
your perfect Detmer plot is she's stuck in a turbo lift.
Yeah.
And she has no choice but to talk about her issues. She can't run from them because she's stuck in a turbo lift.
Yeah.
Somewhere between deck 1 and deck 9,000, according to the finale of season 3. But that's it. That's all you need. Its power has gone out on the ship for some reason, and it'll take a while to restore it, or there's people working in different areas to restore it. But in the meantime, you have Detmer stuck with, say, Owo sitting in the turbo lift, and there's nothing they can do but talk.
You always feel with the two of them as well, there is a relationship there that we never get to see. It's almost like it's happening, but it's just not happening on screen.
Yeah, you don't know these people. That's the problem.
And, you going back to your turbo lift example, you could have a plot like that still resolve with her having to overcome her struggles to get them out of the situation. Like, you could still have her, overcome the situation that they're finding themselves in, talk about the issue, work through the issue, and then have her actually, overcome this obstacle, and then you get back to action.
Yeah, I mean,
and she's back in it.
I mean, throwing that back into, like, say, Stamets and Detmer would have been great, because they did have that fight between the two of them, and to have that, have that debate between the two of them, and both get over that in a better way than what they did. Then that would have been perfect.
How many episodes have we had where two people that aren't getting along are stuck in a situation and they have to work together, and then by the end of it, they're friends again? Tom Paris and Neelix come to mind. They had to do that once. Yeah. Odo and Quark on several occasions.
Yeah, the ascent or the climb or whatever that episode was.
Yeah.
I mean, when you shorten the episode order from 26 episodes to 13, you do lose out the opportunity to have that. But they've also compounded the issue by, again, having this determination to have these self-contained plots in these seasons and these half seasons and these chunks of plot that you have to get through. And so you just can't stretch out some of these stories over multiple seasons and give these characters a chance to breathe. Everything has to be crammed into a season, and you're determined for, I don't know, reasons. I don't know why. I'm sure there's contracts and things like that involved, to have every season be, 13-ish episodes, rather than being a little bit more flexible about that, or having some of these plots stretch out over the course of a couple of different seasons. You look at a series like Game of Thrones, which also has short seasons, but some of these stories are unfold over multiple seasons. And so you're not just in a mad rush to resolve everything each season.
Well, arguably, Detmer, use an example of Detmer, what she's going through, she might never get over.
Right.
She's going to live with it for the rest of her life, because
have that be
it's a mental health
struggle.
condition that she's struggling with. And that's something that they could do. You don't need to resolve this. It's fine.
And just to play devil's advocate as well, because the one thing that we want to be careful of is not to say that the 90s stuff doesn't have its own problems. You get episodes where episodes where you've got people who have deep psychological major breakdowns, and the next episode they're in a funny episode. So we're not saying that. We're just saying, if anything, this universe that we actually live in right now in TV, in the TV landscape we live in, is a better vehicle to do that than the 90s were in Star Trek, but they're just not using it. I think that's the frustration.
Yes.
It's like, we could see it happening. So
look at the episode Hard Time, for example. O'Brien completes a 20-year prison sentence. You're not going back to work after that. That would destroy you. You're done after that, but not him. He tries to kill himself. Bashir talks him down, and then the next week he's fine. Well, the next week's a Mirror Universe episode, so he's not really in it, but the following week he's all right.
That's why we like O'Brien.
Yeah, he just suffers.
Brian must suffer.
Tilly, if you consider her entire character arc in season 3, where she gets promoted to first officer, acting XO on the Discovery, and she has this compelling story all the way up through the finale. And then once we get to the finale, and Ian, you and I talked about this, it's almost like it goes nowhere, just peters out. And there's no resolution, no, hey, congrats, you did a kind of a good job because you did get the ship captured, but then you kind of saved it, but then we took all the credit anyway, so you didn't actually save it. So there's the plots are there, they're being written, but it's almost as if the writers for these episodes are locked in different rooms and they're not telling each other what they're thinking, and they're just handing off the script to the next room, and that room is like, well, we wrote this and you wrote this, and they don't mesh, so we're kind of sort of gonna put some scotch tape on these scripts here and use some whiteout and kind of make things work the way that we do. And this is where we're getting lost in the stories.
Yeah,
because you can see that there is promise. You can see that the story is there. You want to go visit more with Tilly, and you want to understand her trepidation surrounding becoming a commanding officer. You want to see her go through the training program. You want to see her take on these responsibilities. And then she does. And then it's almost like another character, a leading role has to come in and save the day and take that thunder from Tilly. Which is, honestly, it's a little disappointing. And that's not to say that Discovery isn't doing a lot of things right, because I believe it is. It's very enjoyable. It's a lot of fun to watch. But it doesn't carry the same level of character fulfillment that I think we are expecting from a show like this. And that's where we're getting lost.
Yeah, I think so.
Part of the problem is we have a lead, which we've never really had on Star Trek before. It's always been a bit of an ensemble. Original series is the 3 leads with Kirk as the lead, but after that it is broadly an ensemble. And I think since everything has been funneled through the perspective of Michael Burnham, we're losing access to the other characters because of that. Because whenever she's in a scene, it's about her. So therefore, any character interacting with her, it's about how she relates to that character, whoever that may be. So you don't really get as much of insight into what those characters are about as you otherwise would. I mean, you do get the scenes where different characters are sharing scenes with different characters, but they're less so. And it never long before, well, what's Burnham up to? What's her story? How's this going to feed into Burnham's story? How do we get back to that? And that's a bit limiting. I mean, that's the structure of the show. That's what they've set up. Sonequa Martin Green's been cast as the lead. Therefore, contractually, you get the lion's share of plotting and screen time. And they're not going away from that. They can't, because they're already paying her to be the lead. So,
going back to what I actually said at the very beginning of this section, make no mistake, you were in charge. It's such an overt meta comment on the show.
Yes,
it's make no mistake,
really on the nose.
Yeah, it's so on the nose. It was like, oh, okay. I mean, one final thing that a couple of things actually. So the lady in blue, whether or not she's the leader of the Federation, is she someone else? She seems to be kind of part Cardassian, which is just a side note. But Saru, because Saru in the trailer seems to be some sort of ambassador, and later on, when you see Culber and Tilly, he's in the background wearing a uniform again. So it looks like he's probably going to come back as number 1, which in itself, again, is a story plot. Do we think that the whole ambassador to Kalmanar is going to be front and center? I don't think it will. Do we have a little bit at the beginning, which leads us into the story again? I mean, is it something you would like to see developed? Let's go with Ian on this one.
I definitely anticipate them going somewhere with the ambassador role. He certainly is going to be. He's going to be discovering what Kaminar of the 32nd century is. It's obviously going to be a very different kind of culture, completely different culture than the one he recognizes or would recognize. So I think it's logical to expect some exploration of that. other than that, I know we get the glimpse of him back in uniform, so it's safe to assume that he does come back into the fold at some point. Yeah, I personally, I don't want to see him come back as a, and take the demotion, but I also know that that's probably the only way that they're going to bring him back, and I'd rather have him back than not at all. So that's probably the direction they're going to go. I don't really know. I don't really have many other thoughts on that. I know why he, the way the story that they told in season 3, it made sense why he went off with Sokol, but I was still sad to see him not be captain anymore. I'm still going to continue to be sad to not see him be captain anymore.
Yeah. Craig, what about you? What are your thoughts on this Kelpian aspect?
I'm the same. I think that he earned the captaincy, and they were doing really good things with him as a captain, because we'd never really seen our commanding officer at the very start of their career before, and figuring things out, figuring out how to relate to the crew, all that. Captain Pike was very good at relating to the crew. Even Lorca was, and he was evil. So how do I do that? And him trying to find out how to be more personable, and him being that firm but fair commanding presence. That was all really good stuff. And even punishing Burnham for being insubordinate, and then she suddenly gets promoted to captain because she does things her way, and that's cool.
Yeah. Do we think that we'll see her struggle at all? In the way that Saru seemed to, or the way it was at least presented to us as the audience that he was struggling?
Yeah, every time Burnham does something, she's automatically amazing at it. She might do something that irks people, but she's always amazing at everything she does. So I imagine her command style will be everyone's loving her plans, and she's always going to succeed. And maybe the only person that's upset with her is Stamets, because they left that thread lingering at the end of last season. But I don't think there'll be many issues there. And then she'll speak to Vance every now and again and be like, I agree with what you did there, even though it wasn't by the book. We really like that you're not by the book, Burnham, despite the fact that I really hated that you weren't by the book 5 minutes ago. So who knows?
Yeah, I think what's going to happen now is that her sort of doing things her way attitude is going to be a better fit for the role that she's going to have, being in a starship on her own out there in space, making a lot of tough calls on her own, because she's no longer a part of she is a part of the command structure, but she's not she's not a direct subordinate to at least one or two people above her on this starship anymore. She's the person. So the buck stops with her. So I think that's going to be, I think story-wise, it's going to reduce some of that friction of like, why is she being allowed to do whatever she wants? Because now she's the captain. So it sort of makes more sense why she'd be allowed to do whatever she wants. It just was a little bit of a torturous journey to get there.
Yeah.
Yeah. And captains having autonomy is fine, because we see that in all the other shows where they're in a moment, they have to make a decision, and that decision isn't an easy one to make because the situation is running away from them. And then they have to say to Starfleet after the fact, this is what I did. And then it's up to Starfleet to say, we agree with your decision, or we don't agree with your decision, but you've already made it, so tough. You've done it. Right. What can we do about it now? We can reprimand you maybe, or tell you, do it better next time. But it's all that stuff about being out there in the final frontier. You encounter stuff that isn't in the rule book. Fine.
Right.
You encounter situations that you weren't trained for, and you have to puzzle your way through them. That's what Star Trek is, broadly, with those kinds of stories. So, yeah, that's fine. But the whole idea of Burnham just laughs in the face of the rules and gets rewarded for it really doesn't sit right with me, because it has been all that conflict about, here's what the Prime Directive says, here's what the regulations say, here's what we should do according to the letter of the law in this situation, but here's why it doesn't apply, and here's why I'm making this decision. So that's good that the captains can make those kinds of decisions, but having that basis in, I like following the rules where possible, is usually a good start, whereas Burnham doesn't have that.
It'd be nice to see. I mean, just what's jumping out at me in my head at the moment when you're talking is the moment where Chris Pine turns around and says he's sorry in the Kelvin timeline, and he realizes he's done something wrong, and just to have something like that as a moment of, like, her being sure-footed, and for her to get something drastically wrong, for her to like sort of become humbler in the things that she does. would be a really interesting development for her. But it's just, as I say, sometimes it's just a bit like, okay, it's as you say, it's the Burnham show and such, and there's a struggle there. There's a struggle between, you do things off the book, but you always get you always get it right, kind of thing, which I appreciate other starship captains have done before in the past. But a bit of nuance would be really nice to see in this season, where she'll get things right most of the time. There'll be times where she's a bit like what Saru was, which she'll never be as worried about her, herself. She's very confident in herself, very assertive. But to have these moments of like self-doubt, or just a bit more, a few more things to humanize it, because Sonequa does so well in those kind of emotional moments when she needs to. When she's a great actress, so the fact that she can do that, use it. But sometimes I just think she's a bit wasted that way.
You brought up a great point with Chris Pine's version of Kirk. Throughout the Kelvinverse trilogy, you see his growth as a plucky young cadet into a full, responsible captain who deserves to be the captain of a Constitution-class starship. And you go on this journey, and in Star Trek Into Darkness, now, I don't care if you like that movie or not. That's not what we're talking about. In Star Trek Into Darkness, you have a real character moment where James Kirk turns around, realizes that he is responsible for the deaths of over 400 crewmen, and he is looking at them in the eye, and he feels the weight of that responsibility. He apologizes, and he stands in front of them and says, no, take me instead. And he gives himself up, and he's willing to go. And ultimately, bad guy Admiral Marcus is like, no, I'm going to shoot you down anyway. It doesn't matter. And, then we have the rest of the movie. But that is a real moment. And that's the kind of character growth, the kind of arc, and the kind of development that you really want to have in a character who is so instrumental, in a lead character, nonetheless.
So I think we've talked this one to death. Thank you, We Are Starfleet fellows, for delving into that. Is there anything else that anyone wants to mention, stuff that we're seeing on the trailer? As I say, this is the meatiest part anyway, so anything that I might have missed that you want to bring up?
No, I'm still looking forward to it. Look, we talk about the things that we like, and the fact that we'd like to see more of the things that we like.
Exactly.
That's certainly if nobody listening to this has heard the show before, I don't want to give the impression that our show is one that just constantly complains about the show. It's not. We are really fans of the show. We like it. We're excited for season 4. We're just also excited for opportunities for improvement.
And not for nothing, but Star Trek trailers are not designed really for Star Trek fans.
No,
they are designed for other people to get interested in Star Trek. So we are not necessarily the direct audience, and we will see things we like, and we will see things we don't like. I'm personally excited to see more of how the Federation has gotten back together. Like I would like to see more of Navarre. I'm glad to see we're going to get some of that. I'm glad we're going to get to see Saru back on Kaminar, and I'm glad that book is back. And presumably we'll get to go back to Qui-Gon.
Excellent. Craig, anything you want to add?
No, I think we've about covered it. It's about, minute and a half trailer, if that.
Yeah.
So, there's not a lot to cover. I want to reiterate that I don't hate Discovery, and I'm not one of those, the 90s Star Trek is where it's at, and it should have stopped there. I'm not that at all. I want to see new Star Trek. I want to see the format played with. I want to see everything that the franchise has to offer. But I do think that there are some fundamental issues with Discovery that it really needs to address.
Yeah.
I don't think it's a bad show. I think it's a good show, and I think it's a very well-produced show, and I think there's things that it does very, very well, but there's also things it could be doing far, far better, and the issues at this point are systemic. They really need to dig into them and get rid of them and create something new with the strength they already have.
Yeah.
So whether they'll do that or not, I don't know, but I'm hopeful because the potential is there, and they've delivered some really good stuff over the 3 years that it's been on. So I've no doubt that I will enjoy it at some level. I think with Discovery, the start of the season always seems to be quite compelling. or at least season 3, maybe not so much, but season 1 and 2 started off really well, and then it just kind of limps towards its conclusion a little bit. But we'll see how it goes. I mean, I'm excited. We'll see it maybe this year. Cool.
Yeah. Looking at it, if with Rarely Going being on the 12th of August and being 10 episodes, then you've got Prodigy after that. Is that right? Am I getting that wrong? It might be.
They haven't said.
Yeah,
they haven't said.
Yeah.
It's either going to be Prodigy then Picard or Picard then Prodigy, I think.
You think? I think Picard's going to be 2022, isn't it? I think Picard's the last one.
Yeah,
So
I think it's going to be. I think it's going to be Lower Decks, Discovery, then either Prodigy or Picard after that in 2022.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, I would echo what you've all said. I think our podcasts always start from a foundation of they are great episodes. There's nothing. I would argue that it's probably nothing ever below a 6 out of 10, for example. So we're never going to be saying, "Oh, look at this is horrible" kind of thing. And we always start with a good foundation.
Certainly hope not.
Yeah, exactly.
Equally, if it's a bad episode, it's a bad episode. We don't owe it anything.
Yeah.
I do have a question for you guys. Now that we've gotten 3 seasons of Discovery under your belt, are there the way that in other Star Trek series there might be individual episodes you like going back to and putting on? Are there any episodes of Discovery that you guys will just like put on to revisit?
The time loop.
Yeah, I was going to say the magic to make say this man go mad or whatever it's called.
How about you, Mike?
And the first episode of season 2 as well.
Oh yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah. It stands on its own. They have a crisis situation they need to deal with in that episode, and then that's it. And actually, the first few episodes of season 2 are like that. But the Pike introduction, I just think it's so wonderfully paced and wonderfully structured and just strong and confident. It's a confident lead into the new season, and it's great that way. So yeah, that's one that I would put on just for giggles. And I guess the season 2 finale as well, just for the spectacle.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
I think for me, as you know, we went through the season 1 before you joined us on the podcast network. We were going through season 1, so having the opportunity to revisit season 1 was really good. I had a new found for a lot of the show, and I think I will do that at some point. I have all of the Blu-rays of them. I'd always come back to them. And I'm sure I'll find new things out of it. I think definitely the time loop episode is definitely one of them. I haven't revisited season 3 since watching it. I obviously, for our podcast that we did, just covering the whole of season 3, I kind of skipped through it just to kind of get my head around what happened.
Sure.
So yeah. But yeah, it's by any stretch of the imagination, it's nowhere near bad. I would definitely feel that. I strangely enough would angle towards 3 and 1 over 2, so as a season. So that's interesting in itself. But yeah, that's where I would go. But I'm definitely by any stretch of the imagination saying I wouldn't go back and rewatch them because I will eventually. Okay, let's talk about Really Going. 12th of August, it's coming out. We found that out after the event.
You did it again.
Again.
Oh,
great.
Can't help it. Let's talk about Lower Decks. 12th of August it came out, or will come out. It was basically just a cacophony of all kinds of things. Michael, what did you think to the trailer and some of the, already the throwbacks and stuff, or the calls that we've seen?
Yeah, no, it tickles the fancy. It's a lot of fun. It's a Star Trek comedy show taking the piss out of Star Trek, specifically for Star Trek fans. And we're all pretty self-aware. I don't think that we need to be handheld and told like how to feel or think about our beloved Trek isms. And I love that Lower Decks isn't afraid to go there. So seeing the teaser, seeing, we're going to do a lot of sci-fi shit, that's what we're here for. Yeah. And, it's being show run by Mike McMahon again, who, obviously earned a lot of pedigree over the years, most notably from Rick and Morty. And it does have that feel, that zaniness to it. And I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, instantly, it was great to see Riker back on screen following what happened last season. Things like the Four Lights was lovely to see. But yeah, I mean, Craig, how do you feel about this second season? Bearing in mind that obviously you did the podcast for the first season, so what did you make to it?
Well, I mean, I loved season 1. I think there's, I don't know, 6 or 7 episodes that I appeared on that podcast discussing how much I loved season 1, and I do think it's the best modern Star Trek because it's just the most consistent. It knows what it is and it just has fun with it, and that's infectious when watching it. And they've done so many great little things with the canon of the franchise, played around with it, had some fun with it. And the trailer looks fun. I mean, it's 40 seconds? It's not very long at all, but you've got, a few jokes in there. I love Riker in the middle of a crisis situation, just rattling off jazz metaphors. And Boimler's like, I have no idea what you're saying. Just stuff like that. And this is parody Riker, isn't it? This is the Riker that you joke about when you're talking about Riker. This over-the-top sort of man-child that runs around. Well, maybe he's married at this, so he's not quite trying to sleep with all the women or whatever, but he's a bit of a joker. He's a bit of a lad, and and his love of jazz, and at the end of season 1, it's the give me work factor and the factor of 5, 6, 7. It's like, oh god, the jazz. And I like that they're continuing with that. Let's let Jonathan Frakes have a bit of fun with Riker because he always did.
Well, I think it's more Jonathan Frakes than Riker. It's definitely we've seen the outtakes of Jonathan Frakes on Next Generation and stuff like that, and there's that famous one. I don't know if you've seen it, where he keeps looking back and forward at the camera and then runs after one of the ensigns, just as a joke kind of thing. And you can totally imagine that Jonathan Frakes is having an absolute blast on this. You've seen him in his directed aspects of the fact that he's having fun and shouting to people and stuff like that. So you can totally tell that he's going to have a blast. But as I say, I mean, instantly you've got denobulans, you've got all the kind of the stuff that we've got within the show, all the callbacks. The fact that Boimler's still on the Titan is great as well. And as you say, he's bitten off more he can chew. But something that was mentioned, I think, in one of the speeches was the fact of the improvisation stuff. I don't know if you saw that. They're saying that Tawny is really, really good at the improvisation. Maybe not the Star Trek lingo, Michael, but there's certainly kind of the fact that they are able to play around with it, being that it's like, it's open. It's almost like a stand-up comedy role that that they're more than welcome to have a go and see what lands. And I think that's what gives Lower Decks its kind of humorous and nice feel to it.
Yeah, it's respectful. It's in the same way that Galaxy Quest is respectful, because, Galaxy Quest is more about fans of science fiction or fans of something like Star Trek, but it has that knowing wink. It's, you're a bit like this. Whether you go to the conventions and dress up or not, you're a bit like this. We know that you think about this minutia. We know you do, and you know you do, and that's okay, because that's just what being in this fandom means. And these characters in Lower Decks are kind of fans of the adventures that we've been watching because it's part of their history, and you read about it and they learn about it. And you get for example, you get Mariner in the first episode. It's like, you heard about Spock? He came back from the dead. That's what he did. He really did. And what about Dr. Crusher and that ghost that she was sleeping with on this planet? And these just little references. This kind of stuff gets around. It's a bit weird and it's a bit wacky and it's a bit ridiculous. But
yes,
officers will hear about that across the Federation and think, I wouldn't mind getting into some of these dumb adventures.
I think the response to the first season was so positive, and I'd be more surprised if there wasn't. Yeah.
I mean, it's all very respectful. It doesn't feel like it's pointing at you and saying, you're an idiot for liking this stuff. Like it feels like we're all having the same laugh.
Absolutely. I mean, one of my favorite moments last season was the engine hum.
Oh yeah. That was great.
Brilliant.
Point.
It was fantastic. But so as you say, 40 seconds. So there wasn't much there, but we did also find out there's a third season. Yeah. So the fact that they are that confident with it, I think that's good. That's good news overall, isn't it, really?
Yeah. A show like this is relatively inexpensive when it comes to a TV show production budget. you're really paying for a lot of VFX and voice acting, a lot of which can be done now from people's homes. Jack Quaid has his own little recording booth set up, and he's able to send his audio files right over. So they don't even have to be in the same room 90% of the time.
And it doesn't surprise me that it is the first one out the gate, really, because I don't think anyone was expecting anything less, to be honest, because it is such an easy thing to put together. I'm not saying it's easy by any stretch of the imagination,
right?
But it's the easiest of the shows to run. And just before we move on to the Star Trek Picard aspect as well, it's something that going back to the Discovery and Star Trek Picard, because that's where we'll move to now, is the use of the new LED wall technology that the Mandalorian's been using. That they're going to be using that now. Because as you know from some Discovery, they went, I think it was Iceland they went to last time.
Yep.
But the fact they're going to have this wall technology, which always tickles me a little bit, the fact that we've gone from studios where you've got rolling video footage for people in a car, just being in the background to create a scene, to going out in the world, to going back into basically an whatever 50K resolution screen or whatever it may be. It's that in itself is going to be really interesting for both the live action shows, isn't it, Michael?
Yeah, absolutely. I really love that whole effect in the studio life, and I love practical effects. I don't think anyone has a problem with the old animatronic dinosaurs in Jurassic Park. That's a 1992 movie, 94 movie, 93.
Yeah.
And you can put it on today and you're like, oh yeah, no, this looks great. It looks real. And all the actors are interacting with everything in real time. And then you have, I think most notably and infamously, Sir Ian McKellen in The Hobbit, where he didn't want to act in front of a green screen. So it's a real component. I see a lot of behind the scenes footage, especially that Henry Cavill posted recently on his Instagram from Justice League. And you see these giant green screen studios with paper mache rubble all around them. And it really makes you wonder, like, how are they able to act all these things out? And it really is a testament to their ability. And I love that they're kind of going back to these hard sets and marrying the two ideas of digital and real-time analog physical sets in the same place. And I actually got a chance to see that large LED screen at CES before the whole world shut down. And it really, like, when you're standing there in front of it, the way that lights and shadows when the camera moves, and you wouldn't be able to tell, I swear to you, you cannot tell that it's a screen. And it's scary.
So Craig, for you, it's like, as he was mentioning there about the green screen stuff, this is the way Mandalorian was doing it, that, the camera will move with the image like you would in a computer game. So everything would kind of moves around depending on what you want. You can change things on the fly and stuff. It is really, especially the fact that it's been released in kind of a pandemic kind of era where travel is so much restricted. The fact that they can go to new worlds and potentially not tell the difference is an incredible feat in the last few years, isn't it?
Yeah, and you'll get no shortage of people on the internet who will call out blockbuster filmmaking or whatever for the over-reliance on CGI. There's that famous meme kicking about of, it's a still from Avengers Endgame of them all standing in front of a green screen. And I love the cinematography in Avengers Endgame, and this looks ridiculous. It's actors in an environment that they're not a part of. And everyone knows about the Star Wars prequels. They're all standing in front of, it was blue screen for them. It wasn't green screen at that point, but same principle. There's nothing there. There's nothing to react to. They're not part of that space. They're not acting in a space. So you hear about all these production issues you get from location shooting. Again, with Star Wars in Tunisia, they had to come up with things on the fly because nothing was working, because sand was getting in everything and so on. And you do get that spontaneity with location shooting that you wouldn't get anywhere else. So it is still a controlled environment. They have full control over that environment, which might make it still seem a bit sterile because nothing can go wrong. There's nothing to plan for. There's nothing to plan around. There's nothing that can come up that ruins your day and makes you have to think of a creative way to solve a different problem. So that's a potential issue. I'm not going to say it bothers me because it really doesn't, as long as I enjoy the thing I'm watching. Plus, I've been watching Star Trek, right? Every planet is Vasquez rocks.
Yeah.
Because that was what was close to where they were filming.
Even Vasquez rocks is Vasquez rocks now. So
Yeah, that's it, yeah. Or every planet they go to is this one stage that just is so poorly decorated with stuff that it doesn't resemble anything real. So it's a great technology, and I think it's amazing that they're getting their hands on it to use it. And I think it'll allow them to do some really cool stuff, especially when you're filming in a pandemic where that control is important.
yeah,
But I really hope they don't lose sight of the fact is, you know what, we will go and film in Iceland because we have the budget, and it'll be cool to film in Iceland.
like anything, I think you need a blend of everything. You know, so you can have your green screen for certain elements. You can have, you know, the LED screens for creating great vistas, but you might actually want to be on a rocky beach, you know, with the wind sailing around you properly, and you know, feeling the reaction from them and things, putting them into those environments. You know, so I think there's an argument to have for having all aspects of it to keep it real.
Well, if you don't mix it up, the audience notices the artificial nature of it anyway.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter how good the technology is. It doesn't matter how photorealistic the CGI is. Unless you give them something real, your eye will become accustomed to the fake thing and see the flaws. That's just the way it works. That's the way it's always worked. And that's why Jurassic Park works so well, because there are real things there that have CGI enhancements.
Yeah.
So that's just the way the technology works. And that's the way our eyes work. We know our brains know what isn't real.
Yeah.
So you can only fool the brain for so long. So whether it's a better resolution than real life screen, I mean, the very fact that it looks so great might be the giveaway. For example, it's it can't be this. This looks too real. It doesn't look right. And you talk about like The Hobbit when they did the high frame rate version of the first one. You see the makeup lines because they just hadn't planned for it from a production point of view.
Yeah.
So it lifts you out of the moment. So I think as long as they don't rely on it as their only port of call for visual effects, they'll be fine.
There's a lot of information on, it's called Stagecraft. That's the LED virtual wall, 180-degree LED video wall comprising of 1,326 individual LED screens. That was what was used on the set of The Mandalorian to create a 270-degree semicircular background. That is, wow, that's pretty impressive.
And I'd say with the camera movements using the Unreal Engine to actually, you know, make those backdrops so you're moving around with it.
Yeah,
you know, it gives it that realism to it. So
one of the interesting things about green screen, Craig, you were mentioning earlier, is it really limits the cinematography to certain dolly shots and certain pans and certain types of cuts, which is why often you'll see in movies and TV shows very similar types of shots. Like every Marvel is the most egregious, right? Where basically every superhero is framed in the exact same way. They all look pretty much the same.
Okay, let's go to our final one. The Make It So podcast, Star Trek Picard, which is my baby. Let's talk time then. Craig, what did you make to the concept? It's just a teaser trailer. So, you know, we've got a lot of Easter eggs. Now, Easter eggs for me is something that I find fascinating in the world of Easter eggs, because likes of WandaVision, which we covered on the podcast 616 network on the podcast 616 podcast, is something that I'm not too au fait with. I'm more au fait with Star Trek by any stretch of the imagination. But it's interesting that it builds people up and potentially knocks them down when they realize that that's only just to tease them. But we do get a lot of like teasing in this one. But I think generally let's just talk about the pure aspect of what Picard is talking about before we get into some of those. And that's time. Seems to be going to be a big feature of Picard season 2. What did you make to it?
Yeah, well, I'm a bit wary of Picard season 2 in general, because I remember season 1, I approached it with no trepidation whatsoever. I was like, okay, Patrick Stewart's in the writer's room. He knows what he's doing here. He's really amped for this. He said no 6 times, guys, or 10 times, or it depends which interview you listen to. It changes every time. He said no a lot until they eventually wore him down with a presumably big enough payday, I would imagine. But he's in there. They're making this show amazing. I can't wait. The Borg, brilliant. We're revisiting that. Amazing. And then as we get through the season, I'm just getting more and more tired because it's just not delivering on what I wanted it to be and even what it promises in the beginning, because not giving me the show I want isn't a bad thing necessarily, but you have to give me something. You have to give me something worthwhile. And I'm not saying it wasn't worthwhile. What I'm saying is it disappointed in terms of, here's the questions that we're going to answer over the course of this show. And then it dodges them, and then the show ends with some imposter claiming to be Jean-Luc Picard, who's an android with all his memories, but isn't Jean-Luc Picard. So that's another issue. So going into season 2, I'm much more wary. And the whole time thing, again, he's mortal. Eventually his android body will shut down until we find out he turns up in Discovery and it never happened, because that's probably going to happen one day. I think we're headed for a Justice League of Star Trek at some point. It seems like we're going in that direction, but that's another conversation.
Well,
so,
I did think about in the Star Trek Discovery section of saying that what will happen is that Michael Burnham will come and save Picard because she saves the world all the time, or the universe all the time.
That's it. Yeah,
so
she'll pluck him out of the afterlife or something. Yeah. So yeah, there's time. There's all that mortality situation, which we had a lot of in season 1. There's a man in the twilight of his years trying to figure out if he's still relevant, and he seems to have decided that he still is. So you've got him out there Firefly style, I guess, putting out fires or whatever. I don't know what his mission will be. And then we're getting Q back, which I have issues with in a way, because I feel like they're going to just use that as a bit of kind of empty fan service. And I don't want to be so down on the show, but based on what they gave us before, I don't think it's going to be the continuation of the Q Picard relationship that we've been hoping for. We're getting Guinan this season, we know that much. So they're probably going to explain that connection, and then we'll wish they never explained that connection.
Okay, so really looking forward to it then.
Well, I'll watch it, right? But I'm approaching it with trepidation this time.
Yeah.
I'm not going to go out there and be like, this is going to be the best thing ever made. I can't wait. And this time it's, maybe Patrick Stewart doesn't really get what people like about Jean-Luc Picard in the way he thinks he does.
Okay, well, I'm going to reserve my judgment to the end. So let's go with Ian then. Ian, what did you make to this teaser in relation to, it seems to be going down the time route?
I think certainly as far as teasers go, it was pretty effective. It definitely, I think I was certainly more positive on season 1 than Craig. It sounds like you were. I will say that I had some issues with it, but I'll tell you, when the Q, the Queen of Hearts was revealed to be the Q, and the voice comes on there, like, yeah, man, I was drawn in. I'm excited to have Q back. I too have some trepidation that it'll be potentially largely misguided fan service, but it sounded, at least from, I didn't dive too much into the chat that they were doing with Patrick Stewart and John Delancey, but and it sounded like there's at least going to be a pretty substantial role that he's going to play in the plot or the resolution of the plot this season. It definitely doesn't sound like it's going to be, a more empty cameo. I think sort of Brent Spiner in season 1 ended up being, hey, we're bringing Data back. And, I was glad to see him appear. But in the end, he wasn't really much of a presence in season 1. I don't expect that to be the case with John Delancey. I would expect him to play a more substantial role in the events unfolding in the season. That's just me.
I mostly echo Craig and Ian here, but I do think that season 2 of Star Trek Picard, if you look at season 2 of Star Trek Discovery, there seemed to be a pivot in terms of a response almost to certain criticisms, that maybe it was too far away from what we thought it was going to be. And now there's going to be a course correction. So they might lean a little bit too hard into the fan service. And knowing that we're getting John Delancey and getting Whoopi Goldberg coming back to reprise the role as Guinan just kind of tells me that they are reaching to connect this season more with what we're familiar with from Star Trek: The Next Generation. So this overcorrection, I'm not really looking forward to. And even though I'm excited because, you know, obviously the Q plot in Next Generation, that arc, that story thread that bookends the series is really compelling and really exciting to revisit. But Craig, I think you mentioned it. You aren't looking forward to Guinan and Q's connection being explained. I've seen this said elsewhere, and I'm kind of curious what folks mean by this.
So in Q Who, you have that suggestion. Well, not a suggestion. They tell you that they used to know each other somehow,
right?
And Guinan adopts that defensive stance that suggests she knows how to ward him off in some way. And then they revisit that when he's made human. And she stabs him with a fork and stuff like that. That's quite funny. But it's a mystery. So Guinan's a mystery anyway. She's weird and we don't know why. It might have something to do with her being the Nexus. But she has a different sense about the universe than she has a different sense about the universe than other people have. There's things.
Yeah, well, like yesterday's Enterprise as well, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yesterday's Enterprise.
Yeah,
it was.
There's things that affect her in ways that don't affect other people. So, whatever that history between her and Q is, I'm worried that they're just going to tell us what it is. And apparently, that might have been the plan for an episode of Enterprise had it got picked up for a 5th season. They were going to do that. They were going to have Guinan turn up in the 22nd century because she's way old. Yeah, and maybe
I heard that. That's interesting. She doesn't get older, though. I mean, and that's the sort of thing that I sort of scratch my head with Picard committing themselves to these decisions. They're like bringing back these characters that in universe aren't really supposed to age. Their appearance isn't really supposed to change. Data can change his appearance, but he doesn't age. Q can change his appearance. He doesn't have to. And Guinan too, like she's not supposed to age. So it's got to be interesting. They're going to have to sort of do a whole lot of hand waving.
Yeah. Every time Q appears, he's approximately as old as he would be had he aged normally from his first appearance.
Which again, if they want to do that with Q, I think that's fine. Guinan, I'm less certain how they're going to handle that.
Well, Whoopi Goldberg could probably pass for being much younger than she is. I don't think she's not wearing a bit thin in the way that other people are. So I think she'll get away with it. Or maybe it'll just be Elorians. Yeah, when we age another 20 years from the age I was now, it really catches up with us. I don't know, but yeah, it's an interesting one. But there's some mysteries I never want explained. I don't want to know why the Klingons don't have Reggies in the 23rd century. Now I do, and I don't like it because the answer to the question wasn't satisfying. I don't need to know about the alien space jockey, but now I do, and the answer isn't satisfying. Let me just sleep on it and think about it and debate it for decades. Never tell me, because I don't need to know. And that's the same with Q and Guinan.
Yeah, sometimes better just to have the mystery than to have answers for everything, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would always say that. I think with it being an abstract notion, that it makes you think about it over the years, and you can, you formulate your own opinions on it. And that's what I have a problem with a lot of modern TV, is that a lot of modern TV goes to pains to explain everything. And I had the same problem with WandaVision, to a degree, not as much as I thought I would do. But it was like, why do you have to explain that to me? You don't need to explain that. Leave that.
Well, DS9 explained it perfectly. What happened? We don't discuss it with outsiders. That's it. That's all I need to know.
Yeah.
Something happened.
Yeah.
That gives me fuel for further discussion. But what happened? I'll never know. Apart from Enterprise will just tell me, and it's a stupid virus. Who cares?
Yeah. Right. Okay. So from everything you've said, bear in mind, obviously, how big a Picard fan I am. I'm in a really I'm in a bit of a quandary with this because my favorite kind of storytelling is the very nature of what this seems to be. It's the kind of the out of time, in time, going back in the future, going, moving forward, moving back, potentially being in an alternative dimension, seeing things like he does in Tapestry, for example. And I like that concept. And like I'm watching Lost at the moment, and I've watched it at the time of airing, but I'm rewatching it at the moment. And Desmond is a particularly good character for that reason. And it's like consciousness, time traveling. So I love that kind of aspect to my sci-fi shows. I do like the concepts. I love Inception, for example. But when Q popped up, and I was like, and I was like, and I was really felt quite ambivalent about it. I felt that, that's quite exciting. Then went, the ramifications of that. I don't know. They're going to have to do something particularly special for me to make me feel like, so I have that trepidation to make me feel like I can get over it. Now, whether or not it's like just talking about Guinan there about the Yesterday's Enterprise, where something's just out of time, not quite right, that you have that emotional resonance of, there's something not right here. But it goes back to the whole Star Trek Discovery aspect of when they were talking in that in the video feature, which was obviously filmed a while back, not necessarily like weeks and weeks, but maybe like the week before. They said that John Delancey hadn't started filming, so it looks like he's going to be in after a couple of episodes, maybe 3 or 4, and the thing about it was it feels like, and Patrick Stewart had said something shattering happens, and it's like, it's another big moment. It's it's like it feels like that to me, and I don't know if you've heard that. Have you had anyone heard that?
Or the Earth blows up in front of their eyes, and then Q appears and is like, "Ha the trial never stopped."
So so that was the thing for me. It was that the moment when he said it was something shattering for Picard. Now, if it's a personal shattering experience, then I can live with that. It's a personal aspect to it, and as I say, something like Tapestry, which is a great episode, which talks about that kind of thing. But then he goes on to talk about significant trauma. So if it's got the nihilistic aspect, I actually really like that. I like my nihilism. I know as much as it. As horrible as that sounds, I actually like that aspect. So,
well, what's interesting you bring up Tapestry, because in Tapestry, Picard was on death's door, and Q came to him and offered him a way out, kind of thing. So it's curious that didn't happen when he was at death's door at the end of Picard. So so maybe their scenes together will be that kind of. Picard, Q and the real Picard are looking at this android imposter that's now living his life and just saying, look at what this thing is doing. It's not you, is it? Because, I seem to be hung up on this isn't the real Jean-Luc Picard anymore, but yeah.
You are. I think they're just going to move past it, and we're just going to have to move past it. Yeah. Or, I would expect Q to have some commentary on it, but other than that, I think they're just going to hang a lantern on it and move on.
Yeah, but I do wonder if he'll have lost his powers or something like that. He'll have been kicked out of the Continuum. The Continuum's been murdered except for him, because everyone in the Picard timeline is miserable in some way. They've all had some tragedy befall them in the last 20 or so years.
Another thing that was mentioned as well is that Picard's Borg assimilation will come up again. So we're going into that as well, which I don't mind. I don't mind going into that trauma, but whether or not is that a reaction to the fact that he's a golem now? Is it kind of like sort of thinking that he was almost assimilated, but now he is kind of, is he a separate person? Is he living within his, as I say, within his means of like, am I the Picard, or am I something new? It'll be if they start talking about that and who he is, and Q helps him from that aspect of this is who you are. I can see that being quite an interesting story. That it becomes a bit more, rather than adversarial Q, it's a bit more, look, Picard, this is what you are, and the trial continues from that point of view, that Q's come to accept the human race as they are. So that in itself is personally interesting to me if they go down that route. But I've got this trepidation, and it might be good. It might be good that we actually are that. We're not expecting too much of it, and it does clock up. Because another thing he does say is that despite 178 episodes of The Next Generation and 4 feature films, there are events coming up in season 2 that have never been seen before. Now, that is the typical claptrap, really, of
hard
watch
to take that seriously.
Yeah, it is very, very hard.
It's also okay, that could technically be true, but like that doesn't mean it's good.
So, Michael, so what about some of the Easter eggs that are actually physically on screen as a part of a teaser? The way it's crawling through the library of the vineyard, whether or not it's on La Sirena, because obviously La Sirena isn't mentioned whatsoever. It's just a teaser for Picard, really.
It really is. I mean, so it's interesting because I feel as though I've gotten tickled by Easter eggs and been so let down by them that I just kind of didn't care, because I saw quite a few of them, and I very distinctly recall the Captain Picard Day banner from season 1 and how that was featured in episode 1, and that was it, right? So a lot of these Easter eggs, it feels like, is this just another archival moment? Are you just putting stuff on screen to get guys like myself and Kurt and Craig and Ian and all my Trekkie friends and Star Trek Twitter a buzz and talking about it? It feels, I don't know, man, maybe this is some cynicism kicking in here, but it feels very inauthentic.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Absolutely. I think that's the thing that I struggle with a bit. It's like, I want to be able to talk about theories and stuff like that, but when it's a teaser, there's nothing really to go on, apart from just the talking. It's like, oh, look, there's a stargazer. Well, that's probably going to have an effect. It's big enough of a thing, but something like the Reckoning tablet, which is in there, which has a thematic Easter egg in that the power race were out of time. Where will they even go down that route? And is totally alluding to the fact, could we see Sisko? That's what it's screaming out. Do we see Sisko? Well, it's likely it's more of a thematic thing of, well, the power race was slightly out of time, and this is what Picard's going to be like throughout this season, or something like that.
I hope there's a more substantial DS9 Easter egg link. Like, we know that they're going to be bringing back like a lot of the TNG folks, and we're all going to be happy to, for the most part, see them again. But I'd love for there to be some way to wrap DS9 and that lore into this current iteration of Trek.
It was an Call Meany said that it would take a lot for him to show up in Picard. It was not something he was particularly interested in, that kind of thing. So O'Brien seems to be out, unless he's being too contrarian to surprise us. I don't know. But it seems like the Deep Space Nine actors and mythology is getting a little less love these days, because we've got Janeway coming back in a fashion. We've got the original series coming back in a fashion with Christopher Pike and so on, and Spock, of course, and TNG coming back through Picard, and all the Easter eggs of, that was the painting that hung in his ready room, and it has scorch marks on it because they remember that it probably got damaged in the crash, but it's still a full painting. But I mean, is this going to be in the show? Probably not. It's just
it felt to me it was very thematic. It was very, these are the things, these are the toys that we're going to play with. They're going to play with the history of the Enterprise and Picard's life. We're going to play with time, and we're going to play with this aspect of, not quite in the timeline and being able to move around. The hourglass moving backwards. I really don't think it's going to be a tenet in that fact that you're going to physically see that, but are we going to be moving through time backwards? And if they do that, I do not under any circumstances want the end of The Mandalorian, because that CGI was just horrific. So so that's the danger, that if they're going from an old Picard using maybe stock footage, potentially, but and if they do some de-aging and it's clever, then fair enough. But that's my biggest worry. And going back to the John Delancey Q stuff of Guinan, that the Q one can be thrown away quite easily because he can make a joke of it and say, I'm an old man with you, kind of thing, and you can probably live with that. Data was difficult in the first place to actually understand, to get my head around the fact that, is a chubbier version of Data. You know, and I'm not quite sure why they did that, because a lot of the makeup didn't feel like it needed to have that. But anyway, and this totally feels abstract and thematic. And, you know, it's whether or not people see through that theme, or they actually look directly at the stuff and go, yeah, we're going to be on the Stargazer, we're going to be on this, we're going to be on that. And I'm not necessarily thinking that they'll go down that route. It's more of a theme.
No, of course not. If you tried to tie in an actual plot with every single one of these Easter eggs, you'd be 24 episodes in, and honestly, they wouldn't be that good. You know, I mean, I don't want to go revisit the Stargazer era. I'm sure there's some interesting stories to be told, but at this point in the story, in Picard's story, there's nothing there for me as a fan that would actually inform my opinion of him any differently.
What era of uniform would his time on the Stargazer be?
It's just the TOS movie uniforms. We see that in flashbacks.
Okay, so I definitely want that then, because I love those uniforms. So there's a reason.
Yeah, the clock as well was apparently seeing online that the clock is the same time as the Back to the Future clock.
Is it really? I don't think I noticed that.
Yeah, 10:04. Yeah, so I thought that was a nice little touch that they've thematically put that in, which is quite good. I wouldn't mind seeing them. I mean, they did quite a good job of showing the Enterprise D in the first season, so it was quite nice to see it. But again, you know, going back to my comment on whether or not they do that is another thing. I'd like them to maybe go through aspects of the time traveling without actually being that overt with it. But yeah, so other things to note: the Paradise Lost book as well, and also the Long Dark Tunnel, which is a fictional novel from his Dixon Hill series as well, which was quite a nice touch.
Yeah, that was a nice Easter egg.
Yeah, and apparently looking on, I think it was Trek Movie, that they had said that the novel's author is Tracy Torme, which is the writer of The Big Goodbye, which was like even deeper. So I thought, I quite like that. Yeah. So, and that's it. Have we got anything on Picard then? Because there's not much really we can go off. But anything else you want to say before we wrap up and call it a night?
I'm just here to say that I do hope that season 2 of Picard doesn't go full bore into giving us fan service and wants to tell an actual story that is in its own way original and compelling and isn't just a reprisal of the same story of maybe Tapestry or All Good Things or something like that. You know, whether they stick the landing or not, I do appreciate it when showrunners, producers, writers, and ultimately actors do try new things.
Yeah. Craig, what are your final thoughts, Craig?
I'm hoping it surprises me. I'm hoping it gives me something that I'm not expecting. And, well, my expectations aren't low as such, but they also aren't high. I'm not necessarily expecting miracles from this season because season 1 ultimately disappointed me, and it kept disappointing me as it was going. So I think that assuming they give me something different and something new and play around with the character in an interesting way, let's use Q as this barometer of humanity, or capitalize on the relationship he forged with Picard over time, and maybe explore what the trial actually is or what it means. I don't know, but give us something a bit different. And yeah, let's not just wander down Picard memory lane. We've done that. We've done that a number of times, and it's fine. It's been done. So yeah, what have we got from Jean-Luc Picard at the end of his life, or towards the end of his life? Give us that, and give us something more meditative than we had before.
Meditative's a good word. That's something I'd really like to see. Absolutely. So, anyone else? Any final thoughts?
I want nothing but fan service and TNG greatest hits.
all good things. Part 6.
and Wrath of Khan era uniform.
The trial never ends. Neither does TNG.
All right, fantastic. Okay, so this is where we go on our merry way. The first one is going to be Rarely Going. So that's on our Twitter handle, at Jean-Luc Podard. So you can find that there. So, Craig, are you coming back for Ready Going?
That's the plan. Obviously, we can't predict what will happen in 4 months, but yeah, that's the plan.
Excellent. So you'll be there first, and we might appear at some point, but it'll be great.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'd love to.
Then, of course, we are Starfleet. How can people find you online?
So we are Starfleet is at Starfleet Pod on both Twitter and Instagram.
Excellent. And Make It So is on at Jean-Luc Podard again. So that's the best places to find all the shows that we've currently got online. You've got the Sanctuary as well, which is one that Tony does on occasion, but we can talk about that another time. In the meanwhile, anyone, Craig, where can people find you personally online? Where can people find you on that there internet?
Time for my contractual obligation to be fulfilled.
Here we go. They've been waiting all night for this.
Waiting for it. Yeah, that's it. Now, elsewhere outside of We Made This, I can be found on Kneel Before Blog, where I'm on Facebook and Twitter, and kneelbeforeblog.co.uk. Do a bunch of reviews, mostly at the moment of DC shows and Marvel shows and podcasts over there as well. Recently published Star Trek related, our First Contact Day special, which was Insurrection this year. And we discuss whether Riker likes inverted controls when he's gaming or not. So if you want to hear a discussion about that, listen there, because we get into it. And do we deliver a definitive answer? It's up to you. Listen and you'll find out. So there's that. And personally, I'm found under Nemesis 4909, which didn't start as a Star Trek reference, started a Resident Evil reference, and then became also a Star Trek reference when the movie Nemesis became a thing that existed. So 2 of my favourite things became 1. It was amazing.
Excellent. Ian, any way that want to direct people to you online?
No, I generally like to direct people away from me online. No, I'm not very active on the socials, but who knows? That might change in the future. We'll see. You can hear me on the network and on other shows here and there. I am doing a couple of our movie podcasts coming up, so you got that to look forward to. You can hear me on the network.
Excellent. We'll let you go off onto the holodeck then, and we'll see you. We see you when we need to call you out. We'll give you a comms message.
Fantastic. I'm always happy to talk Trek and really anything.
Michael?
Yeah, you guys can find me on Twitter at Mike Slamer. I chat about all things, mostly tech and movie, film, politics related. So if you happen to stumble across my Twitter, don't be surprised if, you see something that just runs the gamut of every topic in the world. I have a lot of opinions. I like to talk, and that's why I'm here doing podcasts.
Great stuff. And you can find me online at rmuldrake. It's RMULDRAKE, and that's on Twitter. You can find my other 2 shows, which are currently running. One's just about closing up, where we're now starting to do a monthly podcast rather than a weekly one, and that's the Time Is Now pod. On Twitter, that's at the Time Is Now pod, which is all about Millennium. We've just completed season 3. As of today, actually, we've just done the final episode, which was released today at time of recording. So that's great. So we've got some specials going on. So that's what we'll be doing for the future. We might look at 7 in the future, for example, and all kinds of maybe Hannibal, that kind of thing, because Millennium has a lot of Tom Harris kind of stuff on there. So we're just going to kind of wind that down, but still keep our fingers in and just do a couple of specials here and there. You can also find me on the Xcast, the X-Files podcast, and that's at the X_cast. So those are the 2 best places to find me. And of course, at Jean-Luc Podard, as we've already mentioned, once Picard starts to air, which could be whenever it will be. It might be tomorrow, might be yesterday. You never know with these Star Trek Picard shows. That leaves us to say thank you everyone for listening on whichever podcast you're listening to this on, because this is going on all our feeds. So thank you very much for listening. We hope you enjoy this next year of Trek. But until next time, let's get out of here. We'll see you in Riser and engage.
Elsewhere on We Made This.
Free with this month's issue.
What I'd like to say right at the start is, that's the first time I've ever listened to this song on headphones. And I don't like how close Fred Durst sounds.
It feels like he's whispering it in your ear,
does.
doesn't it?
But like they put some kind of weird little chorus effect on there, so his voice sounds really slimy as well. And it's like, oh, get the fuck out of my ear, Fred Durst.
That may be the Bluetooth connection and the internet connection.
No, because I remember hearing the voice from, like, you know, the TV speakers and stuff like that, and it definitely sounds like that, but it's just very fucking dry and in your ear, and it's properly on. ASMR Fred Durst is not a thing that I like.
I don't like ASMR anyway.
No. Some people do, but I can't imagine Fred Durst will be who they would be wanting to do it.
Life's milestones.
So, my fascination with Americans and embalming, am I just being weird and obsessive, or is it still a massive deal?
We had my mother embalmed when she died because we just thought it was the thing you had to do.
Right.
And usually embalming, if you're going to have an open casket, they have to be embalmed. Otherwise, they won't look so hot.
And they won't smell very nice either.
No, they would not. It would not be a pleasant experience for anyone. But if you're going to do that, I guess embalming is necessary.
Yeah.
And I don't like the idea. I mean, if I'm dead and you're drawing all my fluids out, then I'm definitely dead. So, it's like it is like taxidermy. I'm just on display for people to look at. I might as well be up on the wall.
Podcast 616, a Marvel Cinematic Universe podcast.
I was gone for 5 years and now I'm in a different reality. Whoa, what's happened there?
Luke's been blipped. Luke's been blipped. Here he is. Luke's been blipped. He's back again.
So, Luke, it's been 5 years. I've got a few things to catch you up on.
Yeah.
What did he make to Loki season 6? Craig?
Well, what are we on? Spider-Man 8 now, are we? With Sony?
Yeah, but it's Miles Morales now, so that's all good.
Check out all of these shows and more on the We Made This podcast network. Make It So, a Star Trek Picard podcast, was created and is produced and hosted by Tony Black and Kurt North. You can find the show on Twitter at Jean-Luc Podard and on Facebook in the Make It So, a Star Trek podcast fan group discussion group. Check out the We Made This network at We Made This Pod on Twitter and on Facebook by typing in We Made This, and you can find all of our shows on our website www.wemadethispod.com. Thanks for listening.